Have you ever heard of a ritual called the crossing? A practice so dangerous that those who perform it may never return. Some say it allows the living to leave their bodies and speak with the dead. Others believe it opens a door that should never be opened, and once that door opens, something may come back with you. The man who told me this story looked as if he hadn't slept in months. His shoulders were hunched. His expensive black suit hung loosely from his body as though he had forgotten how to wear it. One pocket was turned completely inside out. He hadn't even noticed. His face was strange, uneven, almost unfinished. A large, swollen nose dominated his features. His eyes were little more than narrow slits. When he spoke, his voice sounded like sandpaper scraping against metal. "Do you know what it means to cross into the shadow realm?" I shook my head. He swallowed hard, then leaned forward. "You'll think I'm insane." His fingers trembled. "But if I don't tell someone what happened, I think I'm going to lose my mind." For a moment, I thought he might actually cry. Not from sadness, from terror. The kind of terror that slowly destroys a person from the inside. He was only 35 years old, but he looked closer to 60. His hair had already turned gray. Deep lines covered his face. Years of stress had taken their toll. He was the vice president of a small company, always working, always exhausted. But none of that was what haunted him. The thing destroying him was his wife. "Before I met her," he began, "I was just an ordinary man. I met her later than most people find love. Work consumed my life. Years passed. Then one day, I met her. She came from a rural village. She had worked her way through university entirely on her own. Eventually, she became a psychology lecturer. She was intelligent, beautiful, kind. I came from a small town myself. I knew how difficult it was to survive in the city without money, without connections, without anyone to help you. Maybe that's why we understood each other so quickly. 6 months after we met, we got married. Everyone told me I was lucky. Some even wondered why she chose me. After all, many men had pursued her. One day I finally asked, "Why me?" She smiled, just slightly, and said 4 simple words. "Because you're a good man." For a while, life was perfect. Then strange people started visiting our home, and that was when everything began. The first visitor was a middle-aged woman. She looked poor, very poor. She carried a huge black plastic bag. Something long and heavy appeared to be inside. After a brief conversation, my wife led her into a private room, a room she had insisted on having before we were married. She called it her reading room, her study, her private space. Inside, there was nothing unusual. A bookshelf, a bed, a table, nothing more. Or so I thought. That evening, I came home from work. Something felt wrong immediately. My wife's coat was hanging by the door. Her handbag was in its usual place. But she wasn't in the kitchen. She wasn't anywhere. Then I heard it, a sound coming from her room. A slow, steady, chewing sound. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The apartment was always quiet, painfully quiet. The kind of silence that makes every tiny noise feel unnatural. But the sound continued, slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Chew, chew, chew. like someone calmly enjoying a meal, like an aristocrat dining alone in an empty mansion. I slipped off my shoes and walked toward the room. The wind from the balcony brushed against my feet. Cold. Unnaturally cold. The orange wooden door wasn't fully closed. A narrow crack remained, just enough to see inside. I knew I shouldn't look. She deserved her privacy, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. And that day, curiosity won. I pressed my eye against the gap. The room was small. I could see almost everything. My wife was lying on the bed, perfectly still, too still. At first, I thought she was asleep, but something about the way she lay there felt wrong, almost lifeless. Beside her sat the middle-aged woman. Her back faced me. She didn't move. Then suddenly, she turned her head, and I nearly screamed. Her mouth was stuffed full, bulging, packed with something. Tiny fragments clung to her lips. Wax. Red wax. In her hand, she held half of a large red candle. Bite marks covered its surface, fresh bite marks. She was eating it, actually eating it. The room was illuminated only by candlelight. The red candle cast a crimson glow across her face, making her skin look soaked in blood. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering, certain I had just witnessed something impossible. I locked myself inside the bathroom, splashing cold water across my face, again and again and again, trying to convince myself I hadn't seen it. But I had. When I finally came out, the woman was gone. My wife greeted me normally, asked if I wasn't feeling well, smiled, made dinner, acted as though nothing strange had happened. I never told her what I saw, and she never mentioned the visitor. But from that day onward, something changed. More people started coming, different people, different ages, different backgrounds. Every single one of them entered that room, and every single one of them left hours later. I stopped spying, not because I trusted her, because I was afraid of what I might see. A thought began growing inside my mind, small at first, then larger, larger, larger. My wife wasn't just a university lecturer. She had another profession, another life, one she had never told me about. Then came the man who changed everything. He was enormous, broad shoulders, powerful frame, yet somehow he looked broken. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes, his clothes were dirty, his hands shook uncontrollably. The moment he saw my wife, he fell to his knees. Not politely, not dramatically, desperately, as if he were drowning, and she was the only thing keeping him alive. "Please," he begged, "please help me." My wife looked genuinely distressed. She wanted to help him, I could see it. But something was stopping her, something she didn't want to discuss. "You need to get up," she told him softly. "I've already done everything I can." But he refused. He swore he would remain there forever. He even threatened to die on our living room floor. Eventually, my wife gave in. She told me he was from her hometown. She needed to accompany him somewhere. A few days at most, 1 week at the longest. Then she would come home. I didn't want her to go. No husband would. A strange man, an unknown destination, and something about him felt wrong. But my company was entering one of the most important periods in its history. I couldn't leave, and she refused to let me accompany her. So I drove her to the station, watched her board the train, watched her disappear. I had no idea it would be the last time I would ever see her alive. 1 week passed, nothing. 10 days, nothing. 2 weeks, still nothing. No calls, no messages, no explanation. I contacted her parents. No one had heard from her. I contacted friends, colleagues, former classmates. Nothing. It was as though she had been erased from existence, vanished without leaving a single trace. I reported her missing. The police took notes, asked questions, promised to investigate. But I could tell from their faces, missing persons disappear every day. Most are never found. Then one morning, everything changed. I woke up late, walked into the hallway, and froze. My wife's private room was open. Since the day she disappeared, it had remained locked, always locked. Yet now, the door stood slightly ajar. For one beautiful second, I thought she had returned. I ran toward it, heart racing, almost laughing, almost crying. Then I opened the door and found nobody inside. Only a mirror, sitting quietly on the table, waiting. At first, I saw nothing unusual. Just my reflection. A tired man, a broken man. My eyes were sunken, my beard had grown wild, my skin looked older than I remembered. Grief had aged me. I barely recognized myself. I picked up the mirror, thinking only of cleaning myself up, trying to become human again. Then I noticed something hanging over my shoulder. A few thin black strands. Hair. Long black hair. I frowned, looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I looked back into the mirror. The hair was still there. More strands appeared, slowly, silently, growing from somewhere above me. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. The strands began moving, not swaying, not drifting, moving, like living things, like black snakes. They crawled downward, toward my neck, toward my throat. I felt cold, so cold. My hand slowly raised the mirror higher. I needed to know where the hair was coming from. The mirror climbed upward. More hair, more darkness, and then I saw them. Eyes. A pair of pale blue eyes, buried inside a curtain of black hair. Lifeless, watching me from directly above my shoulder. I screamed. The mirror slipped from my hands and crashed onto the floor. I stumbled backward, grabbing desperately at my shoulders, trying to brush away hair that wasn't there. When I finally looked again, the image was gone. But I knew those eyes. I knew them perfectly. Every night before sleeping, I used to rest my head in my wife's lap. She would lower her head, her long hair would fall around us, and through that curtain of black, I would see only her eyes. Those same pale blue eyes. My wife's eyes. After that day, the house changed. Or maybe I changed. Every object she had ever touched seemed alive. Her presence lingered everywhere, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, in the hallway. Sometimes while cooking, I felt someone standing behind me. When pouring water, I would hear breathing beside my ear. At night, I would wake suddenly, certain someone was watching me from the darkness. And during showers, things became worse. The bathroom mirror would fog over, steam covered the glass, yet through the mist, I could still see two pairs of feet, mine and a woman's, standing directly beside me, waiting, watching. I was losing my mind, or so I thought. Then, one afternoon, someone knocked on my door. The same middle-aged woman, the woman who had eaten the red candle. The moment I saw her, I grabbed her arm and dragged her inside. "Where is my wife?" I shouted. "Tell me where she is." The woman turned pale, terrified. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Then she slowly raised the gift box she had brought. "I came to thank her," she whispered. I realized I had frightened her and apologized. Then I asked the question that had haunted me for months. What happened in that room? What were you doing with my wife? The woman's expression changed. She didn't want to answer. Not at all. But when she learned my wife had disappeared, something broke inside her. She finally told me the truth. That day, my wife wasn't sleeping. She wasn't resting. She wasn't meditating. She was performing a forbidden ritual. A ritual known as the crossing. Crossing into the shadow realm. According to the woman, certain people possess a rare gift. They can leave their bodies, travel beyond the world of the living, and speak directly with the dead. The body remains behind, motionless, cold, indistinguishable from a corpse. One mistake, and the soul never returns. The practitioner dies forever. Suddenly, everything made sense. The unnatural way my wife had lain on the bed, the death-like stillness, the strange atmosphere, all of it. Then I asked the question I had never forgotten. The candle. Why were you eating the candle? The woman blushed, actually blushed, then looked down at the floor. My husband died 3 years ago. I wanted to remarry. But strange things kept happening in my house. I thought maybe he didn't approve. So I asked your wife to contact him. The woman swallowed nervously. While she was crossing over, she said, my husband's spirit entered my body. He grabbed the red candle I brought and started eating it. She laughed weakly. Even now, the memory frightened her. Eventually he agreed, she said. He left. And I got married again. I came today to bring your wife wedding sweets. Then her smile vanished, because she finally understood. The woman she had come to thank might already be dead. The room fell silent. No one moved. No one even dared to breathe. The husband sat on the floor trembling uncontrollably. His face had turned pale. Not the pale of fear. The pale of someone who had just realized that every terrible thing his wife had ever told him was true. I stared at him. His expression remained calm, almost emotionless, but his eyes carried a trace of pity. The pity one reserves for a man who has already sealed his own fate. The husband lowered his head. His voice shook. I didn't believe her. I thought it was all superstition. I thought she was trying to scare me. He laughed weakly, a hollow, broken laugh. But then she predicted the death of a villager, exactly as it happened, to the day, to the hour. His fingers dug into his own scalp. I couldn't sleep after that. I couldn't eat. Every time I looked at her, I wondered if she already knew when I would die. And eventually, I asked. The room felt colder. Outside, the wind scraped against the old walls. Somewhere in the distance, a dog began barking. I folded my arms. And she told you? The husband nodded, very slowly. She said there was no point knowing. She begged me not to ask, but I wouldn't stop. His breathing became uneven. I forced her. I kept forcing her, until finally, she agreed. A long silence followed. Then he whispered, she said I would die today. Not next year, not decades later, today. The moment she said those words, everything changed. Every headache became a warning. Every strange noise became an omen. Every shadow looked like death waiting in the corner. I could almost feel his terror. The terror of a man counting down the final days of his life. The terror of someone who wakes up every morning wondering, is this the day? The husband swallowed hard. That's why I brought her back here. I thought if she performed the ritual again, maybe the answer would change. But it didn't. I nodded, because some answers never change. The husband suddenly looked up. His eyes were red, desperate. Then what was I supposed to do? What would you have done? Nobody answered, because deep down, we all knew the truth. Most people claim they want to know the future, but if someone truly told them the exact day they would die, few could bear it. The husband certainly couldn't. His voice dropped to a whisper. When she entered the trance, she looked dead, exactly like a corpse. I kept staring at those shoes, the shoes beside the bed. One upright, one overturned. She once told me if both shoes were turned over, the traveler would never return. His body shook violently. Tears streamed down his face. I told myself it wasn't real. I told myself it was only a story. So, I flipped the second shoe. No one spoke. The confession lingered in the air like poison, heavy, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The husband covered his face. I thought she would wake up. I thought nothing would happen. But she didn't. She never woke up. The old house creaked. A deep groan echoed somewhere inside the walls, almost as if the building itself remembered what had happened here. And then, from the darkest room at the back of the house, came a sound, a faint sound, soft, wet. Something moving beneath the ground. A faint sound echoed from the room at the very back of the house, soft, wet, almost like fingers kneading mud. The husband froze. His entire body went rigid. His eyes widened. Slowly, he turned toward the darkness. The door to the back room had somehow closed. Neither of us remembered hearing it move. Only a narrow crack remained. A blade of pale sunlight slipped through the gap and stretched across the floor. The beam landed directly upon the patch of loose earth in the center of the room. The soil moved. Once, twice. Then again, this time harder, as though something underneath was pushing upward, trying to escape. The husband let out a strangled gasp. "No, no, no!" His voice sounded less like a man's and more like an animal cornered by a predator. The earth bulged. A lump rose from beneath the dirt. Then another and another. Crack! The surface split open. A hand emerged, rotting, gray, covered in mud. The fingers twitched, slowly curling against the floorboards, searching, feeling. The husband screamed, a raw, broken scream, the kind of scream that comes only when hope finally dies. More of the figure surfaced, a shoulder, an arm, a torso. The smell hit us first, the sickening odor of damp soil and decay, like something buried far too long. Then she crawled free. The wife, or what remained of her. Her body looked impossibly thin, almost skeletal. Her skin hung loosely from her bones. Dark soil clung to every inch of her. But what terrified me most was her hair. Long, black, soaked with mud. It wrapped around her head and face like a nest of living snakes, covering everything except two pale blue eyes. The same eyes her husband had once loved. The same eyes he had seen every night before falling asleep. Now they stared at him from behind a curtain of death. Expressionless, cold, patient. The husband tried to stand. His legs gave out immediately. "No, please, I didn't mean to." His words dissolved into sobbing. The woman continued crawling, not walking, not stumbling, crawling. Her movements were wrong, too smooth, too fast, like a serpent gliding across water. She crossed the room in seconds, then stopped directly in front of him. For a moment, neither moved. The husband stared into her eyes, and she stared back. Perhaps she remembered everything. Perhaps she remembered nothing. Then suddenly, she lunged. The speed was impossible. One instant she was motionless. The next, she had wrapped herself around him. The husband cried out, only once. Then the long black hair exploded outward. Strands whipped through the air like living tendrils. They coiled around his neck, his arms, his chest. His body convulsed violently. I took a step forward, instinctively wanting to help. A hand grabbed my shoulder. "Don't." Just one word. Quiet, certain. I looked back and realized there was nothing anyone could do. The husband was already lost. His head slowly settled into the woman's lap, just as it once had during happier times. The woman lowered her head, very slowly. Her mud-soaked hair slid downward, covering his face. Then came the sound. A crunch. Another, and another, like bones breaking between teeth. The husband's body jerked violently, like a poisoned animal in its final moments. Then weaker and weaker, until finally, nothing. Only silence remained. The woman continued holding him, cradling him gently, almost lovingly, as if they were simply a husband and wife resting together. Except neither of them was alive anymore. The black hair tightened, wrapping around both heads. Soon, their faces disappeared completely, then their shoulders, then their bodies, until they looked like a single dark cocoon sitting in the center of the abandoned room. Neither moved again. I released a long sigh. My eyes narrowed, studying the corpse carefully. For the first time all day, I looked genuinely surprised. "Interesting," I murmured. "Very interesting." I left the old house in silence. I didn't speak. I didn't look back. The afternoon sky had turned gray. A cold wind swept through the empty streets of the county town. For a long time, I simply walked, trying to process everything I had witnessed. For several seconds, I stared at the distant horizon. Perhaps the woman is dead. The husband is dead. Isn't the story over? I think I finally understand why the prediction failed. The wife wasn't wrong. The husband wasn't wrong. The prophecy itself wasn't wrong. The mistake was assuming fate only belonged to the living. A chill ran through me. When the corpse emerged from the ground, the mud, the hair, the eyes, then suddenly I remembered. Her hands. Even while crawling, even while attacking her husband, one arm had remained strangely close to her abdomen, almost protective, as though she were guarding something. My face darkened, because she was protecting her child. My footsteps stopped. I believed she was pregnant. Pregnant. The woman had been carrying a child all this time, a child her husband never knew existed, a child she had never had the chance to tell him about. The cold wind seemed to grow even colder. Why was she in such a hurry to marry? Why was she so desperate to have children? Why did she insist on building a normal life despite knowing her own fate? I paused, because she wasn't trying to save herself. She was trying to save both of them. I looked toward the darkening sky. People who can travel into the realm of death eventually learn something. Every future can change. Every prophecy has conditions. Every fate contains a hidden door. And perhaps the birth of a new life was hers. Life ends in death, but sometimes death ends in life. I suddenly understood. The wife had known all along. She knew her predicted death. She knew the danger. She knew the terror waiting for her. Yet she still chose marriage, still chose love, still chose motherhood. Because she believed that somewhere beyond that darkness, a child might rewrite their destiny. And perhaps she had been right. Until fear destroyed everything. Fear is a strange thing. It can save a man or ruin him. The husband spent his final months terrified of death. But in the end, It wasn't death that killed him. It was his fear of it. He feared the prophecy. He feared his wife. He feared the future. And because of that fear, he became the very thing he was trying to escape, his own executioner. Perhaps fate really cannot be changed. Or perhaps fate changes every day through the choices we make. No one knows. But ever since that day, I have never looked at mirrors the same way. Nor have I forgotten the image of that woman, her pale blue eyes hidden behind curtains of black hair, waiting patiently beneath the earth, waiting for the day her husband would finally return. And whenever someone tells me they want to know the future, I remember that abandoned house. And I remember a simple truth. Some questions are dangerous. Some answers are worse. And sometimes, the dead remain silent for a reason. Because once you learn the day you will die, you may never truly live again.